everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Modern Farming Podcast. Modern Farming Podcast is brought to you by Green Gene Foundation, where we are cultivating agricultural excellence through education.
We're Chris and Tara, and together we're growing knowledge about the world that feeds us.
That's right, Tara. And today we have a special guest who is very involved in education. Her name is Francie Black. She's the co-founder of the Home Hacker Camp, which is a robotics and software education. She's here to talk about some of the things that she's doing in the technology world. That's, as you know, very big part of agriculture. Technology keeps advancing and making agriculture different. So I'm very excited to hear the interesting things you're doing with education of children and robotics. So welcome, Francie, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on your show. Yeah, my name is Francie Black, and I've been in the technology industry for a long time, pretty much my whole career. I mean, literally from middle school when I set up my computer lab with these giant IBM computers ages ago, and through college and so forth. But yeah, my background in my corporate life, I managed software development for a big biotech company in the Los Angeles area for many years. Was their manager of internet development, did worldwide software development. Managed it for that corporation. In my latter years, my kids went to a small private school that did not actually have a lot of STEM curriculum. And so me being STEM driven, and my husband is also STEM driven, we started doing projects with our kids in the basement. And one of the projects, which was too hard, was building cell phones. We were doing those, and other kids kind of heard about it. And we had some other kids over, and then the newspaper said, gosh, we'd love to write a story about this in the newspaper. And we said, if other kids are interested in these kind of STEM activities, we said, feel free to reach out and we'll open it up to other kids. And so sure enough, we left the contact information, and other kids were like, oh my gosh, I'd love my kids to be exposed to this. So we started Home Hacker Camp in our basement because we were, building and hacking together all kinds of different devices, from gaming consoles to cell phones and not everything worked all the time, but we were learning all the components, the electronics, and then of course the software that went with it. As we grew and expanded, had to kind of structure it a little more seamlessly. So we started using robots instead. We started doing robotics and coding. And then we started moving into schools that needed the programs. And so we were in a lot of schools for many years and doing summer camps at schools. And so students would come, and a lot of them were homeschool students. And they also had a real lack of access to strong technology curriculum. And so to broaden that, we shifted our classes. Mostly now we're almost exclusively online for our robotics and programming classes. So in our classes, every student gets their own robot. We build and we code robots. Okay, so we are really a computer and science and engineering program. So not only with the hardware, we're always working with hardware and with software with a physical output result. So we have a really good time. And our goal, our mission, our passion is, educating kids. I did a lot of education in the technology space when I was in corporate America. Of course, everything is driven by technology, whether it be your phone in your pocket, your new digital stove, your farming equipment. And today, I don't know if everybody knows, but today is, SpaceX's IPO. And so there's a lot going on there. My son was a Starship rocket. And so he went from doing these classes in middle school to being a Starship rocket engineer at SpaceX. Not everybody has to wind up in that spot, but the point is that so many things are driven through technology, whether you're doing woodworking or farming or rocket engineering. And I just want homeschool kids and kids that aren't getting access to this type of technology in their schooling environment to have access to it, because it's so critical. We want to get these folks educated and feel very confident and be very skilled. And so we're really a great launching point for that.
What age group do you do with your camp?
We're really semester-long classes, and homeschoolers can get credit for it. It's a computer science and engineering. It's a STEM curriculum. States require a STEM credit, so this counts for that. But it is semester-long classes now. We did the camps up until about 2 years ago when we're just out of time. So we have Zoom classes that we teach on a weekly basis. We actually have a 3rd through 5th grade class and 6th grade and higher. So we teach younger kids, and we didn't start off with 3rd through 5th grade, but our population base, our student base is getting younger and younger. So when we started, what I would call our sweet spot was kind of 6th through 9th grade. But we have plenty of high schoolers, 10th, 11th, 12th, that have no exposure, want to get started with it. So we have lots of high school kids that take it, but then we also have a fewer number, but people that really want to get their kids started at a younger age. They're showing an interest. They want to develop that interest, expose them to that interest. So they'll start them off in that third through fifth age range. Now, when we teach it, we don't go as fast or as complex topics. It's the same curriculum, but we kind of teach it at a little bit of a lighter level. So we have our Zoom classes online, and then we have our self-paced courses, which are the pre-recorded videos. And those classes are really any grade, any age. And again, it's a very wide range. So that curriculum is over 100 videos. They're short videos. We give you little lessons. Then you try it on your own and you come back and we walk you through a solution. It's really crazy just how broad of age range it is, but it is trending younger over the years. I will tell you that.
So you say the program is hardware and software.
It
So
is.
let's say somebody's signing up for a class, the self-taught class, you mail them something that they get in the mail that they can put their hands on?
Yeah. We actually ship them a box. So you receive a kit. Okay. And these come disassembled. We have 3 different levels of classes. Okay. So beginning, intermediate, and advanced. So in our level 1 class, this is primarily assembly. Okay. So there's no soldering. But when we're assembling it, we don't just say put A into B, B into C, D into E, that type of thing. We're like, okay, we'll talk about what is a chassis? Why do you have a chassis? What else has a chassis? Well, it gives it structure, it gives it form, it gives it shape. Okay. And then we talk about the motherboard, and we'll look at some of the components on the motherboard. We'll talk about the sensors, and there's multiple sensors on this robot. Some are obvious, some are not. Okay. And so we'll go through all of that. We'll talk about the motors. How do the motors control the wheels and the turning? Okay. And here's another sensor. So we talk about this sensor. So we give them a high level overview of the components as they're building them. We talk about why you connect to certain ports. Okay. Because your software has to match your ports. So you can program your software to do some control. But if it's calling a specific sensor and it's not plugged into, the two don't match between the software and the hardware, then it's not going to work. Okay. So we talk about, at a high level as we're building it, but then throughout the course, as we're coding our software, we're always going back and referencing the hardware. So we're computer science and engineering. So you're learning the hardware and you're learning the software. And this is all in our level 1 class.
You're somewhat structured in what you're doing, but then you're completely customizable to letting the students do whatever they need to when they're done with the course, right? So that could be reused and modified by them.
Yeah, we don't limit them at all. We give them the building blocks, so to speak, and you can be as creative as you want. But yes, we give them a sequence of videos to work through, but you can do whatever you want to do. So I get students that show up at the homeschool conventions and they'll say, look what I made, look what I made. I've had kids bring in their laptops or video, and they're showing me, games that they've created or more things that they've done with their robot. Or we'll teach them happy birthday on the robot, and they'll program it to do some other song, and they'll come in, next week in class, show us what their creation, outside of what we did in the classroom.
And that really shows the mastery, right? Because like you said, you have to learn the method. And once you learn the method, you can kind of do it, within limits, you can do anything you want once you know how to do that. So when they come back with a modification to what they did, that must really make you feel like, I
love it. I love it. And we progress. Like I said, we have 3 levels of classes. So level 1, we build the robot, we code the robot, we're doing different challenges. And then by the time we get to our level 3 classes, we start soldering onto our boards and building other electronic devices. So like this one is Disco Dot. This one got pulled apart at the convention, but we are soldering all the components. We call this a Disco Dot. And essentially what it does is it lights up to any audio. So this is a microphone on it. And so whether I'm talking or playing music, it will light up and do a light display, very much like the houses that you see on YouTube that have these really extravagant Christmas light music. So on a smaller scale, but you can, have this, if you play an instrument, you can play an instrument and watch the lights light up while you're playing the instruments. And as soon as it goes silent, all of the lights go off, and you strum a beat, it's going to strum a beat with you. And it's really cool. The kids love it. This is kind of our final project in level 3. Now, this code is fairly extensive on this. And so this code is already written, but we go in and make some edits to the code before they upload it to their Disco Dot. We also do some handheld games and things like that to get them started. But again, whenever we're building or soldering or whatever we're doing, we're always talking about the details. So don't just put it here and solder it here. Okay, what is an LED? Why do you use an LED? What's an anoid? What's a cathode? What's positive? What's negative? How do the electrons flow? What are trace lines? Why do you have trace lines? So we're discussing all of those things while we are building. But a lot of times it's, do A, do B, do C, and in the end, you're going to have this product. But you say, well, how did it get its power? How did it get its data? How is it working? What makes it work? And they don't have any idea. So we're always talking about the how, the why. We start with robots. We're robotics and programming classes, but what students learn with the robots applies to any electronic device. So whether it be, a disco dot, a handheld game, your phone in your pocket, or a drone flying over your farm field to either image your crops or to spray fertilizer. You can see where it needs more, where it needs less. But guess what? That's all this exact same technology. So just on a bigger scale, the lines of code get more complex, but just understanding how these things work is very enabling.
How does this tie in with AI?
I do some separate talks on AI. Right now, I haven't incorporated it into these classes. We will, but I really want kids to understand how things work. Okay. It's kind of like copying a math problem. If somebody just copies a math problem and copies the result, do you really learn how the math works? You don't. Having AI do a math problem or having, a calculator do a math problem or certain parts of it, that's not bad and it's not wrong. But if you understand how that logic and those multipliers work in math or whatever math you're doing, same thing with coding, just understanding those concepts, learning how, conditions, troubleshooting, making mistakes. That is a key thing. Whenever you code and you're working with hardware, you're going to make mistakes. And you got to be comfortable with troubleshooting and being able to figure out where that mistake is or how I can modify it. How can I make it better? And AI is awesome. I think it's very exciting it's going to enable so many things to happen so much faster. But if you understand the logic and what's happening behind, as opposed to just copying something, I really feel like you're going to do way better in the long run.
You're absolutely right. I think you need to be prepared for the day, or maybe it's already happened, where one of your students comes and says, "Look what AI did for me last night." And they're proud, and you're like, "That's not really the point of the course," right?
I don't think it's bad to use AI at all because I use it every day. Trust me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if they choose a computer science and engineering degree, they need to understand how things work together. And I hear it all the time that people do software and they never work with hardware. Well, guess what? AI can't build this hardware. Talk with a lot of programmers, and I have my nephew, my sister's son. He works for a drone boat company, and he uses AI to help him. And we were talking about this exact conversation, and he said it definitely helps me, but it definitely does not solve it all. He still has to understand, know, and be able to work through because it just can't do everything it wants it to do. But it helps expedite things, helps speed up things. But it's not a replacement.
Is it the hardware that draws them in, or do they eventually get more interested in the software coding because it can be kind of like a puzzle? And
you bring up the hardware, you bring up the software, but there's a whole nother factor that's not mentioned, which is all the environmental pieces that determine, how that boat gets data. How does it get power? It can be your hardware issue, it can be a software issue, it can be an environmental issue. So you're really coding to three things. Everybody loves to build, I'll tell you that. And then in terms of coding, we do some game coding as well. And of course, we're coding our robots. That's the big bulk of our class. And then we do some other, character coding as well. But I get a mix. Every single time I ask a student, what was your favorite part? It's all across the board.
Most of your classes, you said, are semesters, and are they virtual? Are you talking to a student and have multiple students on like a Zoom call?
Yeah, so we do two primary formats right now, are either online live via Zoom. We meet once a week for an hour and a half from basically the day after Labor Day to the week before Thanksgiving. And we break it down based on age group. The majority of our students, though, do the online self-paced course. So they can do it at their own schedule. They can sit down for 5 minutes. They can sit down for 5 hours. They can do it during the summer. They can do it during the school year. They can do it over Christmas break. They have an entire school year, and including summer, to do the online course, so they can do it whenever they want. And we don't grade either. Just, I sometimes ask, how do you grade? We'll give a certificate if somebody wants a certificate. But again, like when we're doing some challenges, like we'll do some challenges where it's a balloon pop challenge. We'll have balloons on the wall and we arm our robots with, a needle. And so the goal is to go straight, pop the balloon and stop before you hit the wall. And some kids are going to spend, 45 minutes trying to get that robot perfectly straight. And then other kids are going to get it like it's going to curve and they're going to go, oh, good enough, And so we don't give an A for one or a B for the other. We want you, as long as you're trying and you're coding and working through it. That's really, rather than you get that absolute precision. So we don't grade. If they're in Zoom and they're participating and they're following along with the instruction and they're doing everything we ask, they essentially get an A. This happens very rarely. I've maybe had, in 10 years, I've maybe had 2 people that I've had to say, you know what, they're just disruptive to the class. They're not, there's some Zoom etiquette. And sometimes it's new for students. They're not used to getting onto a Zoom call with people they don't know. And so, there's a little bit of Zoom etiquette that folks learn. Most of the kids get it great. Literally, I've probably had 2 ever. And I've just had to say, it's just not working out. Let's, move them out of class. Again, I don't think it has to do that the kid is bad or anything. I just think they're just not comfortable in that environment. So, because it's new to them. This is obviously an in-person class, but if it's a homeschooler that's taking our course, then they would be doing these exact same things at home. We also have homeschool co-ops that will have, they'll get a group of students together to do this together. Even we have some small private schools that are using our curriculum, and they use our self-paced videos, because actually finding instructors to teach STEM is actually extremely hard. They can do our pre-recorded videos in class and have a facilitator to sort of manage the classroom environment. But this is the activities that we do. So first of all, every student gets their own robot. It's theirs to keep. They build them. They learn all about the hardware and the components. And then we do a little bit of character coding for fun, just to get them involved or familiar with the environment. And here's that balloon pop challenge. They're supposed to go straight, pop that balloon, stop before they hit the wall. They don't quite get there. They got to go back to the drawing board and try again. So lots of critical thinking skills, lots of trial and error. We're always working with hardware and software. Here he was supposed to code it to turn that corner, totally missed, trying to go back, figure out how do I get those angles. And then we always bring in special speakers every year. So this particular speaker was from Georgia Tech. He was building a spacecraft to catch dead satellites in space. So he was a space trash collector. The kids loved him. And then in our advanced level classes, when we get into our soldering projects where we're building our disco dot. So that just kind of gives you an overview of what the classroom environment looks like. Again, we try and keep it very fun, very interactive. We're not like, it's not like this, staring at the computer, we don't want that. We want you to, we want your imagination to go wild. We want you to create, have fun. We want you to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, then you're not trying hard enough, So making errors is actually really important in our class. And so we want you to figure those out, work through them, and be very, very comfortable with going back and troubleshooting, because everybody makes errors. And in our Zoom classes, my kids always, my students, they're like, Mrs. Black, you're tricking us. And I'm like, I'm not tricking you. You got to think about it. I don't want you to just copy my code. I get kids that are super intimidated, and I get kids that are super confident, and then everywhere in between. And I really want everyone just to have fun with it. And I want you to learn the skills, but I don't want you to feel like, that's what I was saying. Like, if you don't get it perfectly straight, or your robot doesn't quite get the wall, try again. Who cares? Like, I don't want them to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get a B or C because my robot didn't get exactly to the wall. Try again. Just get up and try again. I get parents all the time that tell me this has helped them so much in, problem solving, breaking things down, looking for small corrections that make a big difference.
Can you tell me a little bit about the free rocket engineering talk?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking about that. Yeah. So my son, he and I actually started this program when he was in middle school. He went to University of Colorado Boulder, aerospace engineering, and he went to work for SpaceX immediately after that. He worked at SpaceX on the Starship, which is the one that's going to go to Mars, climbed all over that. He's a test and integration engineer for them. He was a Starship engineer, and then he switched to Firefly Aerospace in a design role. So he's doing rocket engine design, propulsion design. And so he is going to do a free talk for anybody who's interested, a little bit focused toward homeschool students. But if you're not a homeschool student, you are still more than welcome to attend. It's going to be free via Zoom. And he's going to talk about rocket engineering. I think it's a cool opportunity. I hope that others do too, but we're making that available for free. So yeah, so if anybody's interested in that, if they go to homehackercamp.com, if you scroll down, there's a registration. It says Gateway to Mars. So we did this a couple years ago and I haven't changed the title yet. So Gateway to Mars is because the Starship is its goal is to get to Mars, but this year it's going to focus more on rocket engineering in general. And so, but you can sign up there, and that will get you an email invite in the fall, free via Zoom. And if you'd like an email invite, just go to the website and submit that. You could also email info@homehackercamp.com and just put rocket engineering talk, and that we can add you that way as well.
What other courses that you offer other than the robotics class?
We've done different offerings each year. We've done intro to game programming. We do these over the summer as little summer mini courses since we're not doing our camps, but we also have just an intro to computing course that's coming up in about 2 weeks. That particular class is geared toward like 7th grade and higher. It's a single session, hour and a half. So for the many years I've been teaching these courses, students really lack some core computing concepts. Hardware devices on your computer. I get asked all the time, what should I look for when I'm buying a computer? So I'm going to, talk about, RAM and storage and processor speeds and even like some productivity tips and tricks. I get kids all the time, believe it or not, people roll their eyes at me, but I'll tell you, a lot of kids don't even know like save versus save as, they really don't. So there's going to be some really basics kind of stuff, but then we're going to go into some more, we're going to be looking at the inside of a laptop so they can point out the hardware configuration of the interior, just to, again, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, just making them a little more fluid instead of just kind of a user, a thumb typer on a phone, really understanding how the hardware and the software work together in a computing environment. And then another one that we teach, which is coming up in a couple of weeks as well, June 30th, I believe, is Intro to 2D Digital Animation. So even our artists, we talk a lot about our computer science and engineers, but oh my gosh, our artists make our world beautiful in the digital space and the real space. And so we have a 2D digital animation. Actually, my daughter, who graduated from SCAD in 2D digital animation. And so if you want to learn how to make cartoons, essentially, where things bounce and move and on screen, through animation. There's like 5 core fundamentals of 2D digital animation, and she'll be doing that as well. And so if you're looking for some summer enrichment, those are the 2 classes we've got coming up right now. Thank you so much for letting me be part of the Green Gene Foundation podcast. Super happy to be here. I hope, we were able to share something that's helpful. Actually, there is one thing. I have it sitting here on my desk. We don't do these anymore. I forgot to show these when we were talking about our Disco Dot. In the past, we have built our gaming consoles. Now, again, this has gotten ripped apart from conventions. But yeah, this is one that we used to build in our level 3 classes. So again, the skills you learn here apply to any device, including a gaming console. Just exposure, whether it be a drone for a farming field or a game controller or a robot, it's, or an electronic car. It's all the same concepts. Yeah. So I hope that was helpful. And if I can answer any questions, anybody can feel free to reach out at info@homehackercamp.com. No S on hacker.
Awesome. So that's about all the time we have for this session.
Thank you, and watch again as we are growing in the knowledge about the world that feeds us.